Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's devotion. And what I want to do today is spend a few minutes talking about one of the common questions that people ask during difficult times like this, because these are challenging times. Life is different than it was just a couple of weeks ago. So people will ask, many of them out loud, but at least most will ask it to themselves. What is God up to? What is He doing during a time like this? Because if we really believe, which we do, that God is sovereign over all things, He's in charge, then what we have to admit is He has at least allowed this to take place. So since that's the case, what is it that God is up to? So for the next few days, I want to talk through the different things that the Bible tells us that God does during times of trouble and trial, times of challenge and suffering, because God has been very clear about what He does and promises to do during those times, and it's all good things. It's all good for us to do. So, what is it that God is doing? Well, the short answer of it is a thousand things that most of us will probably never even know about. For example, we do know that God is sovereignly orchestrating all the events of human history to ultimately accomplish His plan. So we know that that's happening. We don't necessarily see how that works. Only God has that vantage point from on high. We know that Romans 8:28 is true, that the Lord works all things for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. So He's working this for our good. We may not be able to see that. We may not be able to understand that right now, but He is working that for our good. So there's all these big overarching things that God is doing right now that we don't see. We cannot understand what's happening in that realm of things. But there are some very basic things that God does do during times like this. But before we even get into them, let's make this a little bit more personal. What is God doing in you right now during this time? Um, I can't answer that for you. No one can answer that for you. You have to answer that one for yourself. What is it that the Lord is leading you in this time? What is He pushing you towards? So let me give you some examples. So, for example, maybe one of the conclusions that you would have to come to about yourself is you have not necessarily been the most attentive parent. That it's not that you don't love your kids, not that you would even say that you're inattentive, but you've been really, really busy. There's been a lot of things on your plate. You're busy with work, you're busy with other commitments, and you haven't been the most present person in your home. Well, look at what God has done. Um, God has cleared your calendar for you. He's taken a lot of stuff off of your plate and put you in your home with your children. Um, that's a gift to be able to spend that extra time and energy with them. Maybe, um, maybe you would have to state the reality that your home is more dysfunctional than you thought it was, or that you wanted to admit that it is. Maybe it's with your kids, maybe it's your own emotional health, maybe it's your marriage. That is not as good as it could be. It's not as biblically faithful as it could be. Well, what has God done? God has given you some dedicated time in your home with your spouse, with your kids, even sometimes by yourself, to get some of this stuff figured out, to see what the Lord has to say about it, and get that implemented in your home. Friends, that's a gift. Maybe you've been really, really busy. You've got a lot of stuff going. Maybe you are super important at your job or in your life. I don't know. And you've had a lot of stuff going on, and your attitude has been go, 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 go. There's really not a lot of time for rest. You're sleep deprived. Well, what has God done? Look at what He's done for you. Yesterday we looked at Psalm 23. And I think one of the overlooked phrases of Psalm 23 is He makes me lie down in green pastures. Emphasis on makes me. Uh, that if you won't rest on your own, sometimes the Lord is just going to make you. And look at what he's done for you. He's done this. He's cleared all this stuff from you. That's a gift. Or maybe because you've been so busy or attentive to other things, you haven't been as faithful in reading your Bible regularly like you've wanted to. You've thought about it, you've talked about it, you've committed to do it every new year, and you've got on a Bible reading plan and it never lasts. And, or maybe you've been intimidated by how big the Bible is, and that's understandable. But if you have used busyness as an excuse for that, what has God done for you? He's cleared your calendar. He's given you some extra time where life is purposely slowed down for you and for everybody else. And maybe it's time for you to pick up a Bible and start reading. You could get on a Bible reading plan. You could do the one through the church. That's great. You can get on the website and find that out. You could get one through a Bible app, whatever it might be. Or you could just pick up your Bible and start reading. That's very possible. If that's the case, may I suggest you start with the Gospel of Mark. Very, very quickly, you can get through the life of Jesus and get a good feel for who he is and what he did. And maybe you go from there in the book of Acts and see how the church started and how the church has functioned in its early days, and that we're supposed to model that example, and how the gospel spread around the world. Those are good things. And then you could just keep going, letter by letter, book by book, and be reading. So there's any number of things that God is up to right now in my life and in your life, and those are all great and wonderful gifts. So let's talk about the bigger reasons of what the Bible lays out God is doing during difficult and challenging times. And the first one I want to talk about today, just for a couple of minutes, is that God uses difficult times to test our faith. Not test in the sense like that algebra teacher you had in high school that was so mean, that loved to do pop quizzes and used tests as like a weapon against the class or whatever it might be, and you couldn't stand that teacher because they did that. That's not the kind of testing we're talking about. This is a testing that's like, it's a gift, because God uses these times to expose what's on the inside, and now it's out there for the world to see. What we didn't necessarily know was in here is now front and center, and we have to acknowledge it. That's a good thing. It tests the genuineness, the reality of our faith. What's really there? What's not really there? Maybe you thought your faith was stronger than it is, and this time has done some damage to your faith, and you're really, really struggling right now. Well, that's a gift to know that, to see that, because you've got some time to strengthen that. Or maybe you thought your faith was pretty weak, and it turns out that it's not, that the Lord really is doing a good work in your life, and you're seeing that through this time. Again, that's a gift. So God has a history of using things to test our faith. So here's just a couple of examples from the Bible. In Exodus 16, God's people are already out in the desert. They've been set free by Moses, but what the Lord has done with the plagues on Egypt, and Moses has led them out faithfully. And now here's what God says, Exodus 16:4. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I'm about to rain bread from heaven for you." So it's the manna. "And the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day." Then he says this, "that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not." So God's given a good thing, a gift to them of raining down manna from heaven to feed them in the desert, to keep them alive. How gracious God is to do that. But he gives some very specific laws about how that's to be done. And you have to go out every day, and you can't take on extra because it'll rot, and how all that works. And he says that he's doing this so that he can test them. Are they going to walk in my ways or not? Am I obedient or am I not? 2 Chronicles chapter 32, King Hezekiah has some pride issues that the Lord wants to deal with. So here's what he says, 2 Chronicles 32, verse 31. God left him to himself, that's Hezekiah, left him to himself in order to test him and to know all that was in his heart, to test him. So God has a habit of testing, of poking and prodding to see what's really there. And I think maybe for us as New Testament Christians, the place to go is 1 Peter chapter 1. Here's what Peter writes, speaking of the salvation you and I have. Chapter 1, verse 6. In this salvation you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials. So that's kind of our daily reality right now. Verse 7, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes, though it's tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. So you've got this great salvation that God has given to you through only by his mercy, not by any merit, any achievement on your part. And now there's these difficult times. And what is it doing? It's bringing out the tested genuineness of your faith. It's a good thing for it to be tested, so that when Jesus is revealed, when he returns and we stand before him, our genuine faith will result in praise for him, not anything else, not anything negative projected onto him. So when I was in 8th grade honors science class, of the number of assignments we had that we got to do fun things, one of them was we had to build a bridge with wooden dowel rods. We had to pick the style and structure of the bridge we wanted to build, but then go and get the wooden dowel rods and some Elmer's wood glue and build a bridge. And then when we brought it in, the teacher, Mr. Kraft, would test the bridge. He would hang weights from it. And our grade was based on how much weight the bridge could hold before it collapsed. Well, my brother and my dad are both very gifted with things like that. And they both have worked in mechanical fields, and I'm worthless with things like that. My brain doesn't work that way. So my dad and brother and I went to the store and got the wooden dowel rods and the Elmer's wood glue, and we came back to the house one night, and I still remember sitting in the garage, and we sketched it out on paper of how this was going to work, and we cut the dowel rods and used the grinding wheel to get the angles right to fit the rods in there just how they're supposed to go, and you got the glue and the brush and got it all ready to go. And I am very, very proud that I got an A on that assignment. I was able to hang from that bridge. So we set it on some wooden blocks, and I hooked a couple of fingers around it, and I hung there for several seconds, and because I wanted it tested before I went in for the final test with the teacher. And he hung every single weight in the classroom on that bridge, and it stood tall. So I got this great grade because my dad and my brother built an incredible bridge that I got a good grade on, and I'm so thankful for that. But I learned a very valuable lesson. You don't hand this to the teacher untested and then let him test it. No, you test that first. You make sure it's got the integrity it's supposed to have. You make sure that this is going to work or not. How foolish it would be to stand before the one given the grade with an untested assignment. That's foolishness. And that's what Peter is telling us. How foolish it would be to stand before the Lord at the final day of judgment with an untested faith. You don't want to risk that, because what happens if it fails? What happens if your faith wasn't real? What happens if you were just playing a church game, that you liked the traditions and you did all the stuff that you did, but you didn't really love Jesus like you thought you did? You don't want to find that out on that day. You want to find that out this day. So friends, as all this craziness is happening and all these challenges that are part of our lives, please know that one of the things that God is doing right now for you as a gift is testing the genuineness of your faith. Is it real? What's really there? What's not really there? And once that gets exposed, let's go to work on it. Love you. Miss you. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.